So let me then welcome you to the house that John built. I recognize that none of this would have happened. None of this would have occurred without the foundations that John built. And not just physical foundations. So here at Whitehead Institute, we all loved and admired John for the same reasons that you did and do. And I expect that you'll soon hear more about this from Susan Whitehead. So Suzanne and family, as I have the chance to do each year here, I want to thank you again for lending John to us and to the Biomedical Research Enterprise for 25 years. And with that, let me give it up to you. And since we have an unusual opportunity tonight to hear at greater length from someone who I think met John even before I did, and that's Susan Whitehead.
So hello, everybody. It's really a very big privilege for me to be invited to remember John Pratt with all of you, especially to be in the company of so many of his lifelong friends, his colleagues, his beloved family, his wife Suzanne, his children, Carter and James, and their families. I'd like to say something mostly directly to you, family. And I wanted to say this because it's actually deeply personal to me. And then I'll speak about why I believe it's so perfect to hold the John Pratt Memorial Lecture at Whitehead Institute. So I have come to appreciate over time that John Pratt was one of the most important mentors of my lifetime. I did not appreciate that fact at the time of his passing almost 7 years ago. It simply has to do with the strength of his character of being. I always valued his thoughtful intellect and his wisdom, his steadiness, his reliability. None of these are a surprise to any of you who knew him. His integrity, his unflagging curiosity, excellence in all that he ever did, very simple human decency, kindness, respectfulness, and enduring passionate commitment to the people and the ideas and the principles and institutions that he cared about. So today, years after his death, I carry him with me very strongly. It simply has to do with his character. He embodied and he lived all of the attributes that I just mentioned, and he always did. So, for those of you who did know John, don't you miss his almost imperceptible raised eyebrow and or his sniff when he just went like, when he would go like that, alerting you very gently, of course, to the fact that maybe you were beginning to veer off course in either a large or even a very small way. He never called it out. He just did that brow sniff thing. And they were his reliable signals to us, and we did learn to rely upon his signaling. I miss him a lot, ever more as the years progress. So why does it make particular sense to hold the John Pratt Memorial Lectures at Whitehead Institute? As David Page said, in the most apparent way, he built this place from the ground up, both in the actual structure and in the spirit of the culture. Equally as significant, he fundamentally resonated with research and discovery. He delighted in it. John devoted himself to enabling research in any ways that he could. It thrilled him, both in the process of cutting-edge experimentation and in the potential for creating a better world through improved human health transformed by foundational discoveries. I believe that John would have loved the notion that the Ivy School is using these talks, the John Pratt Memorial Lectures, as an active vehicle for discovery. These talks introduce new ideas, innovations, frameworks, and practices that can be used on the ground to inform and improve services, and these services change lives. I know this has been the case with the work of Ron Suskind at Ivy Street, and from all that I've heard, I imagine the same will likely be true for Michelle Garcia Winter, who you will hear from shortly. Of course, I am so sorry that John is not here and he's not with us. If only we could change that. But he would have been proud of the clear impact of these talks. So I just want to close by saying the John Pratt who I knew, and who I imagine all of you knew, wasn't all seriousness. He liked adventure. He loved to hike. He loved to ski, and he loved to explore. And in that spirit, a John adventurous spirit, I would like to close by doing something in a public way that is totally, totally uncharacteristic for me. I would like to combine adventure and John's tireless work to create a better world. I am moved, as John was, by this combination of new ideas and their limitless potential. So this evening, I would like to announce that I want the John Pratt Memorial Lecture Series to grow so that it is endowed and permanent in the culture of the Ivy Street School. These talks have already powerfully served to inspire innovation and make a tremendous difference in the lives of countless young people. I'd like to offer a challenge grant to all of you, and many of you have already participated in these lectures and in supporting them. But I'd like to offer a challenge grant to you and to others who are perhaps not in this room to bring us over the top to complete the endowment for these talks to fund very clearly exploration and experimentation for the Ivy School. I will match any contribution you or others make up to $150,000. I think John would have loved this. He would have been shocked. This, I swear to you, I don't know many of you, this is so uncharacteristic for me to say out loud in public. But I think John really would have loved it, and that propelled me to want to do this. The marriage of new ideas and helping people in very concrete ways. And it would be my honor to honor John in this way. Thanks.
We all have different memories of my grandfather that make us laugh, cry, and reminisce about our times with him. But I'm here to tell you about the unique few that make him special to me. It wasn't his time at Yale or decades at the Whitehead that earned him the title Pa. It was his golden voice reading Christmas carols and his passion for hiking that he passed on to me. It wasn't his accolades, awards, or degrees, but his caring personality and passion for nature that made him my grandfather. My fondest and most distinct memory of him comes from one of our many summers at our house in New Hampshire. He had just returned from one of his grand, treacherous treks through the White Mountains, the Presidentials, I believe. And before he could even put down his backpack, I had wrapped myself around his leg like a little sloth. I kept telling him to come look at my day's work. No, this was not a Lego tower or a pillow fort, as many of you probably expected, but a plethora of topographical maps of New Hampshire with sticky notes placed all throughout. Each one marked the hike I wanted to do with him. I'd also written down all the names of the hikes plus the mileage on a little pad of paper. The wide array of notes and maps scattered across the table made it look like I was planning the next royal wedding. The most surprising part of this is that he didn't brush me off and go for that beer he had been thinking about ever since he started his descent. He sat and listened enticingly until my wee little lungs couldn't say another word. He told me which were his favorites and stories of hikes gone wrong as I sat on his lap, enthralled by that perfect storyteller voice of his. When I asked him when we would do them, he responded, one day soon. Sadly, that day never came. However, even though I can no longer go hiking with him, his legacy lives on through all of us, and that is why I am honored to be a part of this lecture memorializing my grandfather. Thank you.
That was beautiful, Ian. I was really touched as a grandfather. Thank you for the opportunity to share a few brief words about John Pratt. It's a privilege to reflect on John's rich life and to participate in this inspiring annual event. Whether dauntlessly leading treks in the rugged Himalayas, implementing a coherent state budget, or helping to establish one of the world's preeminent biomedical research institutions, John Pratt drew upon those qualities that inspired so many friends and colleagues for decades: sound judgment, supreme competence, integrity, and a call to action, and always with grace and humility. Yale undergraduate, a naval officer with Admiral Rickover, Harvard Business School, the Pratt name and heritage, everything was scripted for John to make his mark and fortune in the private sector. But that was not John's intent. He had a keen interest in public issues. He was president of the Public Affairs Forum at the Harvard Business School. As his close friend John Salvati has said, John brought an engineer's mind to solving problems and designing systems. His degree at Yale was in mechanical engineering. But we all know he wanted to do that in the public and nonprofit sectors. In 1972, John joined the Massachusetts state government as budget director in the Executive Office of Human Services, which had just been created as part of a major reorganization under Governor Frank Sargent. The new office attracted a cadre of bright young individuals committed to public service and to reform of the human services system in Massachusetts. For John, as for me and the others, several of us are here tonight, it was a formative experience. We created a tight bond that has lasted to this day. We shared a commitment to improve the world, to address problems seriously, and to excellence, all laced with humor and an appreciation for the foibles and ironies of this world. Most of us, certainly John, carried on with eclectic and consequential careers. John's dedication to human services was subsequently demonstrated on the volunteer front, with his leadership roles in Planned Parenthood and the Ivy Street School, which of course is what brings us here tonight. John's focus was on organizational and financial performance, but the mission was to serve others. Now, as you've already heard, John had a wry sense of humor, and one story captures his single-mindedness and this sense of humor. For the small group of us who accompanied John on our ascent of Mount Lafayette some 40 years ago, we'll never forget our own version of Napoleon's retreat from Moscow. John invited 4 of us from Human Services to join him in New Hampshire for the weekend. He loved, as you know and heard, to climb the White Mountains. But on this particular weekend, the weather forecast was problematic. So we didn't bring, his friends, we didn't bring climbing clothes. Then there was a break in the weather, or so it seemed. So John insisted we climb. Off we went, but without proper clothes. I in a trench coat and loafers. After about an hour, it started to rain. Well, all right. But as we got higher up the mountain, the rain turned to snow, and then to heavy snow. Should we turn back? Never crossed John's mind. Higher and higher we climbed, and deeper the snow. While we were all becoming more and more concerned, we knew there was absolutely no way to persuade Pratt to turn back short of his goal. Finally, we reached the summit of Lafayette, 5,250 feet. In a near blizzard, I'm still wearing loafers. I honestly wondered if that were the day I would meet my maker. John, nonplussed, led us back down the mountain and to the warmth of the house. I always thought he took a particular delight in pushing us to the limit. On the serious side, just one small vignette captures John's mastery in handling difficult challenges. The state was going through one of its periodic fiscal crises in the mid-1970s. I had moved from the Office of Human Services to the governor's office, and Governor Dukakis was intent on finding large budget savings in the welfare department. I have long forgotten the details of the proposed cuts, but my instincts at the time told me that the proposal would not withstand close scrutiny. So what did I do? Of course, I called John and explained the situation. Within hours, he had produced an ironclad memo laying out the flaws. The proposal would not produce significant savings, but would impact tens of thousands of recipients. The next day, he came to the governor's office and, in his understated but confident manner, persuaded a reluctant Dukakis to jettison the proposal. The capstone of John's career, as you know, was associate director of the Whitehead Institute, from its beginnings in '81 to his retirement in '06. Only someone of John's diverse talents and interests could have succeeded at such a complex job. Upon John's passing 6 years ago, David Baltimore, the founding director here, credited John's, and I quote, vast problem-solving skills, judgment, and supreme competence for not only getting the Institute off the ground, and this is important, but also for establishing the kind of culture at Whitehead that we cherish to this day, unquote. John had the rare combination of being an outstanding administrator and an exceptional leader. In conclusion, it's fitting that this annual event at Whitehead has become a way to celebrate John's life, his talents and service to others, while highlighting cutting-edge research to improve humankind. Thank you.